happy, glorious, extra special 2024 to everyone. It's your awkward uncle, Kinky Chaos Carl here, praising the Emperor and filling in for nasty Nurgle Nick, who is currently undergoing marriage counseling with his wonderful wife. Today I'm going to be taking your request from Cribstriber2471, who asked, mere minutes after the Combat Blade video was uploaded, one-shot Thunderhammer build when? Now, making a monstrosity melting Thunder Thigh Zealot build video was always a possibility, but I'd written it off as I figured it was a bit too popular. Everyone already seemed to know about it, and it wasn't particularly difficult to build. But I've played it extensively, and hell, if people don't already know the build's ins and outs, I've got plenty of things to say. I'll be breaking down the weapons, the talents, and how to deal with every monstrosity in the game. Now, the formula for this build is really simple. So to save some time, I'm gonna hop over to a recipe that someone else has put together to speed things along. So Monster Hunter recipe, yeah, this one looks good. Okay. When I was a little girl, my nearsighted Meemaw sat me down and told me about my late grandpappy. He was a simple man. He liked him some big hammers, some big swings, and he loved the Emperor something fierce. He was also a violent drunk and yeah, okay, we get the point. Oh, this looks promising. When they thought Grandpappy wasn't looking, the Psychers snuck off together. Poppy followed and listened carefully for signs of heresy. "What are you doing, sibling?" asked the one. "What are you doing, step-sibling?" the other corrected in hushed tones, their lust barely contained in, "Oh, what is this? This is heresy! Heresy! That's not how you use Brain Burst! Oh, Emperor, protect me!" Oh, there it is. "Real men drive trucks. Truck, truck, truck. Lift that truck so you can blind oncoming drivers with yellow beams and be a danger to everyone around you as you mow down children with your limited view over the hood of your truck, truck, truck."
Are you thinking nasty thoughts about me again?
If I was, you'd know, wouldn't you?
Unhand me.
You've been watching me. Don't try to deny it.
I'm not a sack of... not so half.
I make no promises.
You people need Jesus. First ingredient, a Thunderhammer. There are two different types, the Crucius and the Iron Helm. I'm gonna go into a lot more detail later, but the point is that you have the special to charge up your next attack to hit like a truck, truck, truck. The second ingredient, the Shroud Field ability. 100% backstab damage, 100% weak spot and critical damage, and a 100% chance to crit. An insane boosted damage for one massive strike. The third ingredient, two key talents. Backstabber with plus 20% melee backstab damage, and Purge the Unclean with plus 20% damage against infested and, more importantly for our build, unyielding enemies. And that's it! You successfully made a monster hunter. Go out there and get him, slugger! And I'm not even being facetious here. If you just want to be able to flatten monstrosities like a champ, this is all you really need, paired with some understanding of when and where to smash them with your invis. Of course, there's one small issue with this. The overwhelming majority of time you spend on this build, you are not going to be stuffing monstrosities. Even less of each match is going to focus on them as you insta-burst them from behind. You're going to have to be equipped not just with the biggest targets in the game, but to effectively slap through wave after wave of trash and elites and specials, unless you want your team carrying you between bosses, which is where the real challenge comes in. Let's start with the first ingredient, our Thunderhammer. The simplest one is the Crucius Mark II. Its heavy attacks, the ones we'll be relying on for both hordes and monstrosities, come out in a predictable left-right repeating pattern, and its special powered-up slam hits slightly harder than its counterpart, which can translate into a lot of extra damage with all the modifiers we'll be stacking onto our colossal strikes. The problem with the Crucius is that, when powered up, it will discharge on the first enemy it strikes. And with our massive wide swings, that could be a random trash mob. Which might seem fine, the Crucius does decent damage with its swings without needing to be powered up, especially when plowing through trash. But, of course, we're eventually gonna have targets we absolutely want our overcharged hammer to connect with. Our heavy attacks sweep in such a wide arc that we'll accidentally hit enemies that aren't even in our field of view. So maybe you'll hit a trash unit instead of staggering or instantly popping the crusher about to flatten you with an overhead. Or, more importantly for our build, maybe you'll hit any number of enemies in between you and your hammerhead connecting with the back of the monstrosity you're trying to tenderize. Not just ruining a single attack, but wasting your ability with up to a 45-second cooldown. Absolutely annihilating some random idiot and leaving your intended target completely unscathed. Spoiling what very well might be your only moment to shine in the entire match. The only monstrosity spawned and you atom lobotomize some asshole with barely 300 health with a swing that literally does 100 times that amount. Then there's the Iron Helm Mark IV Thunderhammer. Its heavy attack combo is more complex, and by more complex, I mean that it has this gross loser strike down attack at the end that we will almost never want to use, which means either biting the bullet and doing next to nothing every third swing when horde clearing, or paying way more attention to our attacks than we'd ever typically have to. And, of course, we're losing out on a small amount of charged up damage that we'd get with its beefier cousin. The trade-off? Well, when we charge up our Iron Helm Thunderhammer, it doesn't discharge a recoil off the first enemy it hits. It melts through trash and only stops when it collides with an enemy it deems worthy of being anally annihilated. Specials, rangers, gunners, and everything further up the ladder. The closest thing a Zealot will get to using the godlike power sword when swinging through trash. The problem? Well, we don't want to combo into this useless third attack, and we want to be charging up our hammer all the time. That means a whole lot of micromanaging our horde clear. You'll become intimately familiar with the patterns by necessity when facing general mobs. If your first swing comes out for the right, you don't discharge at any bigger baddies, you're on track for a normal 2-swing pattern. Your next sweep will follow and you can charge up your hammer to reset yourself back to the first swing. If your hammer collides with a bigger enemy that sends you into recoil on either swing, you can follow it up with 2 uncharged sweeps right after. Of course, if you're against a wall of armor, you can simply recharge after every swing and you'll continually whip your hammer out from the right as you pound those heads in. But we have to factor in that, during fights, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna accidentally throw out a light attack, you're gonna be forced into pushing a special, or any number of hiccups that will throw off your rhythm, which means sometimes, when you charge up your hammer, it will come out from the left, meaning if it doesn't discharge on any big units, you need to recharge your hammer immediately after to reset your combo. All this to say, it's a lot more involved than just swinging left and right with the Crucius, but it will be so much more effective. Letting you use energized attacks to melt through mobs while simultaneously discharging on bigger threats. Letting you ignore trash to hit monstrosities, those specials will still eat those meaty invis backstabs. And getting yourself into this rhythm can also help with landing backstabs. You'll get a feel for your weapon and where you are in the combo and innately understand which way you're about to swing, which is important for landing backstabs when your strikes are coming out from the far left or the far right.
Fight, nigga!
And while you're usually going to be swinging for the right, there are plenty of situations where you'll be fighting a horde and you'll go straight into hunting a monstrosity, and knowing which way your swing is about to come out can be the difference between a big boy backstab and a silly billy side smack. On top of that, in the heat of the moment, you'll sometimes want your swing to come out from a particular side based on how you're positioned and where you're trying to hit. Having the pattern ingrained in your mind means that you can get that perfect arc within that tight invisibility window. Of course, some of you with plenty of experience swinging around lumbering heavy weapons probably have some questions, like how are we supposed to keep doing massive heavy attacks into hordes without having an unbroken chain to rely on to keep the horde at bay? How will we steal the time to charge up our hammer and not be eating pock slaps in the meantime? Which leads us nicely into our talents. Now, I want to go ahead and cover Martyrdom right from the start. It gives us 8% extra melee damage for each missing wound up to a maximum of 7, and since we can only have 7 wounds, that maximum is entirely theoretical because missing 7 out of 7 wounds means that you're fucking dead. So at the actual maximum of 6 wounds, that gives us an impressive 48% increased melee damage, more than doubling our potential maximum from Inexorable Judgment, our only other contender for the Monstrosity Mutilator build, since Blazing Piety only increases our critical hit chance and our invisibility already grants us a guaranteed critical hit. The problem? Well, Martyrdom is unreliable. You can obviously get your health down to nothing with ease, but staying there is the hard part, especially when using a sluggish Thunderhammer that requires a lot more tactful and mindful play to keep from taking damage. For every Zealot out there landing a max Martyrdom, backstab, space kaboom, hammer ass pound, there's a Zealot bent over on all fours because he took a single hit while trying to get in position to smack the monstrosity in the first place. Until death can only save us so often, and we probably already just blew it getting to 6 stacks in the first place. Not only that, but the absolute pinnacle of hammer banging monstrosity genocide zealous zealots is to go into the assassination mission and positively bear back that final boss with a thrust so painful that you literally end the game. The problem is, if you want to make use of Martyrdom, you'll need to skirt around the edges of all the health packs your eyes are going to be tossing right at the assassination target's feet, which is, quite frankly, impossible. Compounding this is the incentive to ignore Medicate and the inevitable remorse when it ends up costing you a run because your character asphyxiates from the whiff of a Nurgle fart during a game-ending wave. But with that said, it's completely viable. If you're more comfortable running Martyrdom, you can follow this build and just slot into there when you reach the end of the tree instead of Inexorable Judgment. But that choice of keystone capitalizes on our question from earlier. How will we steal the time to charge our hammer up and not be eating pock slaps in the meantime? By dodging like absolute champions, constantly hopping around when we're not laying out a gargantuan sweep to slaughter a line of trash. Dodging is an integral part of playing this build, not just to avoid trash reprisals or recharging our hammer, but to give us mobility when fully charging our hammer's heavy attack for a big daddy back thwack on a monstrosity that's drifting away from us as it hunts one of our less invisible allies. Which brings us back to our hammer, since the reason we're fully charging our heavy attack against monstrosities is because of thrust, the only blessing we absolutely need as certified monstrosity manhandlers. Whether you opt for the simple and singularly effective Crucius or the versatile but challenging Iron Helm, we're looking for the same things. We want thrust, and we're looking to pair it with either Head Taker or Slaughterer. Head Taker is more consistent and absolutely the better blessing if you're opting for the Crucius, while Slaughterer is a good alternative choice with the Iron Helm's superior crowd clearing potential. And honestly, it's going to be difficult to be too picky since we really need our perks. First and foremost, our plus 25 damage to unyielding enemies. The Plague Ogre, the Chaos Spawn, the Beast of Nurgle, even the Demon Host, they're all unyielding. It is a 100% necessary perk for our Thunderhammer if we want to be erupting bosses. Our second is a bit more flexible. Plus 25 damage to Carapace Armor is a good choice since pounding Crushers and Cavian Mauler heads is one of our strengths. Increased critical damage isn't too bad either since we're guaranteed one every time we wail on someone from our Shroud Field. But there is one perk that is absolutely necessary if we're going to go on an assassination mission. Plus 25% damage to Flak Armor. Our assassination targets are decked out in full flak, and having that perk makes an absolutely gargantuan difference. Which also means that the Thunderous Blessing is extremely useful if you're planning on making a specialized hammer for taking out the Scab Captain. Your hits on his shield will transfer through the Brilliance as long as you plow him after his shield pops within 5 seconds of your last attack. As for our bonus stats, the most important of all of them are damage, penetration, and first target, for obvious reasons. We want to be hitting really fucking hard. That said, crowd control is a close second. Not just for the stagger or the cleave, but for the impressive boost it gives to our attack speed, making it quicker to land those perfect ass slaps on monstrosities and leaving less vulnerable downtime between our horde clearing sweeps. And then there's defenses. Fuck defenses.
Fuck them. Right, Jesus Christ.
Put that shit at 0. It's sprint cost and push cost. If you're pushing anything other than a pouncing hound or a leaping poxburster, you're fucking up. And there's such a tiny variation in the sprint cost that you'd have to have weapons grade mathematical savant autism to somehow notice the difference. I made this pile of junk and noticed absolutely no difference over its 377 companion, despite the fact that I have trouble making eye contact and have a post-secondary honors degree in mathematics, if you know what I mean. And now that we've got an absolutely killer hammer in our hands, or two if you're keen on building a special one just for rupturing the spines of assassination targets, we can finally take a deep dive into our talent tree. But first, we need to insert a message from today's sponsor. That's right, we've hit the big times over here at the Dark Tide Dungeons. Screw Kellogg's erotic novels and Zack Schneider. Today we have been sponsored by everyone's second favorite game, World of Tanks. Now, I've been a massive fan of World of Tanks for decades. All the way back to World of Tanks 1942 when I was fighting to get it to run at a playable frame rate on my family's Windows 98 machine. I've been playing off and on my whole life, mastering a whole plethora of skills, not just tanks, flying bombers, sniping, piloting helicopters, you name it. But, of course, in World of Tanks, we all come back to that titular machine of adrenaline-fueled warfare, the main battle tank. Some of my oldest recordings going back as far as 2011 are of me beginning my journey of mastering that treaded titan of inferno launching devastation that I've continued almost to today. Learning how to perfectly lead my shots, how to position myself to consistently land catastrophic hits on enemy tanks while keeping myself under cover for reloads, how to angle my thick front armor when I didn't have cover to abuse, which targets to prioritize, how to make the most of my time between each cell cycle, learning my ranges so I could confidently nail that all-important first shot without having to guess and adjust. But the most satisfying skill to learn is, of course, the ability to lead, anticipate, and ultimately annihilate the only vehicle more dangerous than a main battle tank, a goddamn helicopter. Skilled helicopter pilots will absolutely dominate games, but if you're a good enough tank operator, you can swat them out of the sky like flies. You'll make them so angry that they will try to kick you, and that's what I yearn to do. That's what I mastered. World of Tanks offers one of the most satisfying tank experiences you could ever have. New iterations forced me to learn new, more aggressive arcs from my tank shells that I was hurling out of my turret as a brand new, even more evasive target was introduced, the Jet. Often flying too high dogfighting to ever be a viable target, slapping one of these out of the air was like catching the golden ball in Harry Potter's broomstick game, I assume because I don't really know anything about Harry Potter. Putting in the time and dedication to become one of the most dangerous tank operators out there, splitting maps in half to keep my opponents locked into their distant spawns while their tickets inevitably hemorrhage as I maintain control of the center, out-shooting and out-positioning enemy tanks to keep that armored superiority, and, when I needed to, simply driving at the enemy team and killing every single person in the way to force a big lead and secure an inevitable victory. And you can too! With my exclusive code KinkyCarl2024, you can jump into the game with numerous benefits over limited losers who pick up the game at the same time. And I'll be right there alongside you as, full disclosure for this endorsement, I haven't picked up the game in some time. Not since they took the real life accomplishments of men who took part in the Norwegian heavy water sabotage, one of whom was still alive during development of the game, and gave it to their female OC. A move many would call insensitive or gross, but Patrick Soderlund, chief design officer of Electronic Arts, spun as misogynistic gamers not wanting women in their video games rather than being put off by the idea of developers taking the accomplishments of real, incredible, underappreciated veterans and giving it to an imaginary tittied fantasy character. He asked me specifically to not buy the game, and later, after people like me, better known as the core audience, didn't buy the game, he got shit-canned for the company for some unknown reason. But now I'm back and I'm ready to... Wait a second, Battlefield? What the fuck is World of Tanks? Oh, Jesus Christ, it's a free-to-play, pay-to-win monstrosity. Premium ammunition? Oh god, what have I gotten myself into?
Hey, you think you can hit that tank?
Yes. Eventually.
I might cry.
First, I'm going to show you the default and generally most popular way to build the Hammer Slammer before going into my own preferred variants. We'll grab Backstabber and Purge the Unclean, two of our necessary talents for exploding monstrosities, then work our way through Bleed for the Emperor for that big survivability boost and grab our Stunstorm Grenade. From there we get those insane invincibility talents that make Martyrdom viable. I'd call these talents just about mandatory on most Zealot builds, but certainly on this one. There are many times where you'll find yourself relying on to eat any number of attacks so you can do your duty of murdering the monstrosity in your sights. Then we grab that Benediction Toughness Aura and shunt across the tree to get our Shroud Field Invisibility, which is where I'm going to do something controversial. That's right, I'm choosing the 6-second invisibility over the more powerful, longer cooldown variant. And I'm sure I've already lost some people who are big fans of the one-shot hammer build because that extra 50% backstab and finesse damage is crucial for chunking through the biggest health pools like the Plague Ogre. But hear me out here. Sure, you won't be able to fully one-shot the beefiest monstrosities in the game, but you know what you'll gain? The ability to be useful. What do I mean by that? Well, a 3-second window of invisibility is good for just about nothing other than lining up your next hammer swing. On the other hand, a 6-second invisibility means that you can be helpful outside of killing monstrosities. Imagine that! Taking down objectives, saving downed allies, rescuing dead ones. It's especially useful because the game doesn't send monstrosities at you when you're doing big objective-centric parts of a mission, letting you blow the shorter cooldown of your invisibility without worrying that you'll want it for a monstrosity moments later. It's also extremely useful for monster hunting, give you ample time to react to any situation to land that perfect backstab or to give you enough time to recover from a mistake. Like when you use it because you're an absolute moron who, in the heat of the moment, mistakes a beauty for the Plague Ogre you expected to arrive. Those extra seconds give you time to find the actual monstrosity and get a decent hit in instead of blowing an invis that now takes even longer to recharge. Though, that said, sometimes muties are the real threats, so be careful out there. Oh,
Oh, there he's... Wait.
He's just fucking...
That's what's going on. Oh no, he's trying to drag him to Hades. Oh.
If all that isn't enough to convince you that it might be a better choice, I'm going to quickly point out that I'm using the 6-second invisibility for every clip in this video. I also like to go all the way and get invigorating revelation. Even if you're one-pumping the monstrosity from behind, you probably just invised your way well out of position and into the way of a big wave of enemies, so having your toughness replenishing with some damage reduction is certainly helpful. Then, if you want to be like most monster hunters, you'll take a trip down to Pious Cutthroat to give yourself a strong method to get your ability back off cooldown, but otherwise you're just eating up all those martyrdom talents. But if you want to try the momentum keystone that I prefer, you can keep Faithful Frenzy's 10% attack speed and grab Inexorable Judgment instead. And since we're throwing in our hat with playing around dodging, there's no reason to not pick up Swift Certainty for that extra speed to hunt down ranged enemies and that passive dodging bonus while we do it. The Duelist is right there for our final talent, probably a bit too difficult to plan a dodge into a backstab for our guaranteed Shroud Field critical, but jack your Zealots height up to max and swing that hammer at head height and you're bonking nothing but juicy melony weak spots. And in my experience, something like this is what you'll see for most boss delete builds. It certainly works, but for me, the more hours I put in, the more I realized just how much I was relying on constantly dodging, and I kept wondering how good it could be if I could just somehow work in one of my favorite talents in the tree, Second Wind. It's so good. just pooping toughness directly into your mouth at all times. But the big problem was that it's right before Blades of Faith, which I cannot stress just how much worse of a choice it is compared to either grenade. Meaning we're not just burning 3 more talents deep into one side of the tree, but we need to exit that section from a completely different branch. So I set about making what I could consider the perfect dodging monster hunter build, a setup where you have all the tools to be competitive in every part of the game, horde clearing like a proper zealot, full 6-second invising for objectives, revives, and rescues for completely invis clutch potential, and hitting bosses so hard that if they don't pop immediately that they're more than well on their way out. A far more well-rounded build compared to the strict one-trick pony of Hammer Zealot to do more boss damage than any other damage as you drag them between the maybe 2 bosses per mission and hope they don't completely whiff their invis backstab. First, we go and grab that amazing second wind talent through a couple of great toughness nodes as well. Then, since we're already going too deep down in the middle for Purge the Unclean, it only makes sense to continue. That means we're missing out on the exceptionally useful bleed for the Emperor, but we get the useful Restoring Faith as consolation. And it also means that we get the best blitz the Zealot has on offer, Immolation Grenade. The biggest challenges in the game are often when your team is being hammered by a massive wave of enemies, and being able to light up a choke with constant fire is one of the most effective ways to decimate that threat. Then we get another great toughness node for our troubles before shunting our way back to the proper path. We certainly can't ignore how insanely useful Until Death and Holy Revenant are, and as dodging machines, we can pick up Duelist here as well. Then we get to pick up the most consistent, if not the best aura the Zealot has, and ride back over to our invisibility. We pick up the 6-second buff as discussed, and then we're down to fully fill in that momentum branch with our biggest sacrifice being that nice plus 10% attack speed from Faithful Frenzy. But the rewards for that sacrifice are absolutely worth it. For me, it was the most consistent monstrosity melting mallet build I've ever used. It wasn't until I finally worked out this tree that I was becoming so competitive for general DPS that, once every few games, I was doing the most damage in the game without factoring the enormous boss damage I was dealing over everyone else. And with all my dodging constantly refilling my diaper with toughness, I was consistently staying alive and not eating up Medicae. Then, with my invisibility, I was also saving allies constantly, molotoving the ground to clear the way and invising to secure a save, or hammering my way to a rescue point and invis clutching for the team. After writing off the Hammer Jammer Boss Buster build as a one trick that I wasn't particularly enamored with, since going through this deep dive it has easily become my go-to Zealot build for any Maelstrom. So I've gone into enough detail about everything else we'll be doing, but what about the main course? What about hammering hideous horrors? Well, first there's the Plague Ogre, one of the monstrosities you're just about guaranteed to not be able to one-shot, which will naturally be heavily affected by what buffs you manage to maintain before the strike, ally buffs affecting you, and the debuffs on your target. The good news is that the Plague Ogre is a big ol' bitch, easily the least threatening of all the monstrosities. It's unique in that if it's targeting you, no matter what character you're playing, you can solo him with ease. Just stand close to him. When he goes to attack, dodge backward. After he misses, jump back in so he doesn't do any of his charging or lunging attacks. Rinse and repeat. Of course, as the boss butthole buster, with your invis, he's probably not targeting you. A good backstab swing should have taken out at least half its health, and 2 more charged up full powered knocks to either the back or the head should be enough to finish him for good, turning an instant kill fight into one that might last 5 seconds instead. The only move you have to worry about is his AoE slam from his stomp that will throw you away if you're too close, so just keep an eye out for that and dodge back to avoid it. Easy peasy. Next is the wacky inflatable arm Chaos Fiend. Not much to him. He's only got 3/4 of the Plague Ogre's bloated health bar, but he does move pretty quickly and unpredictably. Landing a full backstab should just about be a one-shot if you can manage it. The one thing you have to watch out for is when he's already picked up one of your allies. You might think it's a perfect chance to get him in the back while he's distracted, but even with invisibility, this cheating little asshole will somehow know you're there and immediately turn on you the moment you're close by. Don't fall for that poorly coded bullshit. The last of the common trio is Nasty Nurgle Nick's wonderful wife. Now, she's a special one. I don't know how adept you listening might be with the body of a woman, but every one of them, no matter how monstrous, has a special little spot you can stimulate. It can be difficult to locate, but if you hit it just right, pow! She'll instantly erupt! If you can connect with her clitter weak spot, you'll not only get a backstab bonus, but the weak spot as well. The problem is simply landing that attack. Make sure that you're in the right swing of your combo to be thrusty in for the necessary angle to make things easier. It's also useful to jump just as you swing for that bit of extra height advantage to ensure it really nails her. Either way, this is Nasty Nurgle Nick's wife we're talking about. She's easy! Just landing full thrust on her weak spot without any invisibility is enough to do at least 1/3 of her health. Master master consistently connecting with that weak spot, and that's all you need. Then there's the demon host. If one of your allies accidentally aggroes it, you get free backstabs for days as long as your ally isn't running away too quickly. One of the easiest boss kills you'll ever get. If you're the idiot who aggroed it, then I mean, like, man, you had one job. Apparently you can go invisible and it will swap its aggression to a different ally, but I went no because I don't aggro demon hosts unless I do. The last one on our list is the biggest highlight possible as a gavel enthusiast, the Scab Captain. One thing is to use light attacks against his shield, one of the few uses you'll ever have for the Thunderhammer's light attack. They do about equivalent damage to a fully charged heavy attack, so don't waste your time with anything else. Then, once his shield is down, delete him to the wonder and admiration of all your friends and family. Depending on your team, you'll want to make sure that you're not hit by the knockback of his shield popping. Being thrown back like that just puts a bit of extra time before you can get in behind him and hit him with a backstab, which is a problem because your allies might just chunk through his health while you're trying to get there, and then his shield's right back up and you're fucked. And that's it! You'll also be an incredible asset of monstrous special maelstroms as you will be able to one-shot each lesser monstrosity with ease. Even if you don't have your invisibility ready, despite the short cooldown, your enormous backstabs will decimate those lesser aberrations in just a couple of swings. You will be such a tit-slapping, cock-bursting monstrosity thigh-slapper that even your allies will be jealous beyond all reason, with psychers trying to rally your team against you.
Stop that cockburster!
But not even they will be able to slow you down from hammering through monster after monster, rampaging through them with a vigor and passion usually reserved for psychers and their step siblings. Of course, despite all the work I put in, the build still has a glaring weakness: dogs. Fuck dogs!
Fuck!
They're difficult to hit due to their speed compared to even the light attack of our hammer. They'll bump into you when you're invisible and stagger your heavy attack before it can land on your targeted monstrosity. And when a hunting ground wave comes crashing down on you, you'd better hope your allies have an answer, cause you sure as fuck don't. Or you can blow a Molotov. That's always a good answer. Or better yet, you can outfit your Zealot with a ranged weapon that has the clip size and rate of fire to put them down. My personal choice is the Frax Mark 7 Headhunter Autogun, the single shot variant, because the burst fire once made me want to puke. It felt like the perfect balance between bullets before reload, accuracy, and one-shot damage. But hell, you can probably make an argument for any ranged weapon, so go nuts! Go with what you like! Just make sure it can pick off snipers unless you're confident that your team will handle them for you. In conclusion, with a well-rounded build like this, you might not be the one-hit wonder like a 3-second Invis Martyrdom Zealot with a Crucius, but on the whole, you'll be a far more effective player in every other situation. You'll make a significant impact at every stage of the game and have the capacity to carry any team. Well, almost any team. Alright folks, that's it for me today. Get out there with the rest of the kids and fuck Nick's wife.
Let's do this shit.